On the final episode of Just in Case You Forgot, Season 2, Delaware County, I finally talked to the man everyone simply calls the Hunter, the man who found Stacey Colbert in Delaware County.
Yep, this is John Hess.
John is serving a life sentence in an Ohio correctional institution for crimes unrelated to Stacey's case.
We had a young dog, and we lost the dog. Hollered at my brother-in-law and said, hey, there's a human skull over here.
So listen to that now on Just in Case You Forgot, Delaware County.
Why here? We don't know.
Just in Case You Forgot podcast is produced and hosted by William Swafford. Music was put together by William Swafford.
This podcast has taken me farther into the Stacey Colbert case than I ever imagined it would when I first started, Just in Case You Forgot. I did learn a lot of new things, got some things wrong. One thing I did get wrong was the name of the hunter, the man who found Stacey Colbert in Delaware County in 2004. This mistake I don't take personally because the media had reported two different names for the person who found Stacey. However, I did find out the man's real name, and he wasn't hard to track down. The man who found Stacey's remains in 2004 is John Hess Jr. John is serving 11 years to life in prison for crimes unrelated to Stacey's case. John Hess was put in prison by the state of Ohio for crimes against minors. His youngest victim was under the age of 12 years old. The state of Ohio determined that John was a sexually violent predator and he had been convicted on other occasions for gross sexual imposition with a minor. I am totally against anyone who brings harm to minors, but I gotta talk to John to hear his version of what happened on the day that he found Stacey Colbert. Would John tell me more than what is in the old newspaper article about the day in 2004?
Violation of PRC policy. Thank you for using GTL.
Thank you for using GTL.
Hello?
Hello.
Yep, this is John Hess. Said you just wanted to do that podcast.
Yes. Thank you for calling me.
Yep.
John didn't waste any time. He started talking about the day he had found Stacey Colbert.
Yeah, I'm in prison now, but about the only thing I can tell you is back in 2004, what happened was me and my brother-in-law was out coon hunting.
John had just mentioned that he was out hunting with his brother-in-law. That was the first time I've ever heard of a second person being there on that day.
And we had a young dog, and we lost the dog, the young pup, but had an older dog with us too. And the older dog treed on that riverbank that night, which is the Scioto River, here on 257. And so we went back the very next day trying to find the dog, and then hollered at my brother-in-law and said, hey, there's a human skull over here. At first he didn't believe it. He said, oh, bull, but I said, no, come here and I'll show you. So I showed it to him, and he said, dang sure is, that's either a woman's skull or a kid's skull. And I said, how can you tell? And he said, well, I've been in Vietnam, and he said a woman's and a kid's skull is always small, and a man's skull is always great, big and round. And that's how you can tell the difference. So then I went back home and told my wife about it, and then my wife said, well, you better call the police. So I called the Delaware Sheriff's Department.
John found a human skull while out looking for his lost hunting dog, showed the skull to his brother-in-law, and went home. Then later, he called the Delaware County Sheriff's Department. I would like to point out at this moment that John is not originally from Delaware County. He was just living in the county at that time. One question comes to mind though. Why didn't John's brother-in-law call law enforcement?
They had me to come back down there where the spot was where I found it, and then she said, first one guy asked me, said, how did you find it? And I told him the same story, that I was out coon hunting. I came down to find my pup, and couldn't find the pup, and I found the skull. guy said, and they said, well, if we need anything else, we'll get a hold of you. And it went on. They never did contact me no more.
John was never interviewed again to see if he had ever had any association with the victim, Stacey Colbert. John did talk to the media.
The Channel 10 News did come to my house and did an interview. It was kind of funny the way they had it on the news, because they said, what did you think? They said there was no doubt, just on our news, that this was human remains. And they said, what did you think about it? And I said, well, when I first saw it, I thought it was some type of Halloween mask or something, which I did, because it was right around the month of October when I found it. I don't remember exact dates, but
I would like to believe someone would know the difference between a real skull and a Halloween costume. The exact date was November 27th of 2004, about a month after Halloween of that year.
that's about the only thing I could really tell you, because that's what happened. And then of course, I saw it on the news afterwards, and the sheriff's department and all that dug that area up, and they found the rest of her remains there buried, but her skull was at the surface. And then on the news, they said that they think that somebody killed her or something and buried her there on that riverbank.
Yeah.
So, good thing that came out of it is at least the family knew, what happened to her and all that. And, I didn't want no recognition or, anything, wasn't proud of it, but that's exactly what happened.
There was one thing that kept bugging me.
So you've never been re-interviewed by Delaware County law enforcement?
No. No, they interviewed me the one time when I found it on that day, and there was 3 different deputies that asked me about how did I find it, and I told them the same story, which is exactly the truth. Is I was off my pup and went back down there to look for the pup, and I couldn't find it, and that's what me and my brother-in-law was doing, is looking for the pup, trying to find it. But then we found out, of course we did find out later on what happened to the pup, but we didn't know it at the time.
What did happen to the lost hunting dog?
One time we was out hunting that night, the pup was with the older dog, and somebody stole the pup off the tree, and just so happened his grandson was in school, and one of the boys told him about, I found this dog was on a tree, and I took it off the tree. It's a nice dog. And he said, and they explained to him what it looked like, and he said, that's my grandpa's dog. So we ended up going to the sheriff about that and got the pup back.
So are you originally from Delaware County?
No. I was raised in Meigs County, but the reason why I was around Delaware County is I actually lived in Morrow County, which was county over, but my brother-in-law lived there in Delaware County, and we went coon hunting a lot together.
Yeah.
I would go over to his house, and when we'd hunt them woods there on 257, he owned some property there, and we used to hunt there. And then we hunted him behind his house too, because he owned a big set of woods back there, right off 257.
So was you was hunting in that area then, or in a different area?
Yeah, we was hunting in that area.
Okay.
But the dog, we was hunting in the woods across the road from it, but the dogs, crossed over.
Yeah.
And went over into that woods. But when they crossed over, that's where the last place we heard the dogs, and we couldn't find the pup, and we hunted for it for over 3.5 hours trying to find the pup, and couldn't find it. Drove up and down the road and everything, and then the next day, that's when we went back down there, and he said, well, the last place, of course, we had a dog named Dixie, and he said, the last time that Dixie was treating her was right here on this riverbank, and then he said, you go down that way, and I'll go up this way, and that's how I hollered at him. And I said, hey, Ray.
He said, hey, Ray. I point that out because that is also the first name of the other name that the media had mentioned as the one who found Stacey. the name that I thought I had wrong. There was 2 newspaper articles that I read from 2004, each reporting a different name as the person who found Stacey. No article mentioned 2 people being there on that same day. The 2 names that the media gave was Ray Parsons and John Hess Jr.
Because his name was Ray, and I said, "Hey Ray, there's a human skull down here." And he said, "Oh, bull crap." And then I said, "No, come here and I'll show you." So that's when I showed it to him. Of course, he was in Vietnam.
Yeah.
That's what he told me. He said that it was either a woman's skull or a kid's skull. And I said, "How can you tell it ain't a man's skull?" And then he said, "Well, I was in Vietnam, so the man's skull is always big and round. He said a woman's skull and a kid's skull is always small."
That just makes me wonder just how many skulls did Ray see in Vietnam? I knew what John was in London Correctional Institution for, but I asked him anyways to see what he would say.
So, what are you incarcerated for now?
Sex crime, GSI, 2 third-degree felonies, which I wasn't even there. That's what I was saying. I'm in here for something I didn't even do.
John claims he is innocent of the crimes that he received a life sentence for. I'm not the one who can help him out with that. Even if he is innocent of one crime, he still was convicted of other sex crimes towards minors in the past. There are all kinds of monsters that walk amongst us. John claims that he was in prison for another crime at that time. The incident happened that put him in prison for life. If that is true, then any lawyer would have gotten proof of that. Law enforcement would have gotten proof of that. So I have to say, I don't believe it. Also, John wouldn't tell me what he was in prison for before at the time of the incident. He was in prison before, years ago, for another sex crime towards minors. John won't be eligible for parole till the year 2029.
And they said that my parole board hearing is 2029, October 2029. As far as your questions about the Stacey Colbert thing, that's all I can tell you, because I found her remains. I called the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department came there, and they ended up digging that area up and found the rest of her remains. And they did DNA testing and all that. I don't know what all they did. I just seen it on the news. And because they never did come back and ask me any questions or anything. They just said, "Well, if we need anything else, we'll get a hold of you." They never did say nothing or never did call me. But one thing that I am glad of, though, that at least the family got, knows what happened to their family member.
Yeah, they're still trying to find the person that did it.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. I know the sheriff's department told me that they suspected that somebody killed her, but I don't know who that would be. All I know is what I found remains on the riverbank, and I turned it into the sheriff's department.
Yeah, she was kidnapped out of her apartment back in 1998.
Yeah.
So.
I said I didn't know all that, but I did know that I heard some of it on the news, and I seen some of the family on the news that said, "We want to think that hunter that found my," it was her sister. I said, "I want to think that hunter found my sister's remains." And then one day came and interviewed me. Channel 10 News came to the house and interviewed me. I used to live in Marengo, which ain't very far away from Union County. There's Morrow County and then Union County and Delaware County. But I worked in Delaware, but I lived in Morrow County.
After all this, I wonder why Delaware County law enforcement did not re-interview people after so much time had passed by. John claims that he had never been questioned about whether or not he had known Stacey Colbert. Did Delaware County, back in 2004, just try to pick up where Columbus detectives were at with their investigation? I myself still have some questions about how the investigation was handled at first by Delaware County and by Columbus detectives. I believe that there are things about what happened to Stacey Colbert that will remain unknown. I would like to mention that a few weeks after Ashley and I had met Detective Bessinger in Delaware County, Detective Jeff Bessinger retired from the Delaware County Sheriff's Department. Even though this is the end of Season 2 of Just In Case You Forgot, if you want to know more about the investigation into the death of Stacey Colbert or would like to help, simply get on Facebook and find Finishing Stacey's Fight Facebook page, or contact myself at miopodcast@outlook.com. Thank you for listening to the True Crime Podcast, Just In Case You Forgot.
Why here? We don't know.
Just In Case You Forgot podcast is produced and hosted by William Swafford. Music was put together by William Swafford.